That's the number one mistake I see people make when trying to come up with a projected rental price. And that's new. It has not been that way. That's how we find ADUs that aren't ADUs that everybody else in the market overlooked.
Today is a big day. I've got one of my friends in the ADU world has come on and he's going to share some of his experience because we're talking about real estate investment today, and it's not my forte.
Derek Sherrell is that ADU guy on YouTube.
I'm like a rules guy. So, Derek, thank you so much for coming on.
Glad to be here, Ryan. I'm glad that you called and asked for my opinion.
Of course. You know, I watch a lot of your construction stuff. That's the fun ones for me. But then every now and then the algorithm's like, hey, this guy's on Bigger Pockets too. He's telling people how to burr and stuff. And honestly, that's always been a real blind spot for me. So as soon as I get to the numbers, I'm like, I think I should just call Derek. He'd probably be able to whiz me through this much faster than me trying to learn it from scratch.
Yeah, for sure. There's a great opportunity to make a fair return in real estate while adding needed infill housing. So I think it's a great opportunity for you, Ryan, being plugged in and having such a huge community to dip into this arena as well.
Thank you. And so we did a call before this for a little bit of context, and Derek kind of gave me some of the first questions that I should have in my head, just so that when we do this real conversation, I kind of have all the facts straight. But to catch everybody up who's watching this video, I've kind of got two ways I'm thinking about this. One is, and I'll explain them in the order that they kind of fell in my lap. One is some people have put together an investment fund, and I know that they're good at building ADUs. I've seen them put lots of units up. They specialize on specific cities, not in my region, and they have a model. It works. So they're trying to build an investment fund. And in the process of working on that with them, I'm like, okay, maybe I should get invested in that, and B, maybe I should build a little pool and have people come in with me on it. And that's one option where somebody else is kind of doing a lot of the work, bringing the expertise, and also claiming a big share of the process of the returns. And then there's this other option of like, well, hold on, if I'm going to devote a bunch of mental energy to this process, should I just find a property near me and do this on my own? And still sharing it on the channel, there's still an option to bring people in with me or do it on my own. And kind of, do I do option A, the investment fund, where I'll probably learn less about the actual process, but that also means I take less time? Or should I do option B of rolling up my sleeves and picking a property and starting the slow process of becoming an expert in one of my local jurisdictions, and not my current role as like a state theoretical expert, but like a real anyway, that's the two options. Derek, do you think that's a fair assessment, or do you have anything to add to either of those characterizations?
Yeah, I think that's very fair. And for our viewers, just to like dumb that down into like layman's terms so we don't lose anybody. One is, do you have more time than money, and should you build an ADU? Or do you have more money than time and you want to be hands off, and should you just invest in somebody else building ADUs? So we'll just make it simple. A is, do you invest in somebody else's projects passively? Or B, do you take on the project yourself?
That's it. And I think it's great to dumb it down, right, to like that's the language I need to understand. That's literally what we talked about on the call. And I think it made me, after our first call, think a little bit about what I'm actually trying to accomplish too. Because the channel's doing well. Thank you, everybody who's watching. And then I'm trying to think, like, what's my yearning right now is I do want to impact housing costs, but I probably have more of an impact working on like state rules than on actual like bricks and mortar or 2x4s. And so that's not the exact thing that I think I'm addressing, but I do feel like my work is getting too theoretical sometimes. And it just feels good to like do the thing and know that something exists permanently, not a law, but a house. And I just went on that Carrie organized an ADU tour in the peninsula on Saturday, and I just miss when I used to work for her, I could go into a bunch of units and I knew they were in the ground because of that team and that work we were doing. And I don't have that right now. And so I kind of take credit for everything that gets built, but I'm not actually the one doing much of it. So I think that's what I'm trying to get at. And in some ways, the investment fund is a very easy way to do that, as long as accredited investors only. And so that's like a thing that you have to qualify for. Sorry, my headphone just died. But then the other option is to do it myself and have one like right down the street kind of thing. Literally, yes, in my backyard, if that makes sense. So yeah, are there other goals that you think like should we think about other goals when we're doing this decision calculus between the two options?
Yeah, for sure, Ryan. I mean, I think you broke down really well, like the couple of options. One is like you're really good at policy, and the other one is, hey, I want to be more involved, hands-on, and see the actual thing. I would always ask everybody, what is the greatest and best use of your time, and what brings you joy? Like, we seem to leave those two things out of our goal setting sometimes. I know at least I do. I can't speak for anybody else, but I see that happen often, where we think we want something, but when we really sit down and figure out what we really want, it maybe looks a little bit different. So in your case, Ryan, I would say look at the greatest and best use of your time. Like, you're a people person, you're great at building community, you're great at marketing, you're amazing at policy. I mean, whenever I want to know what's going on in California, I literally, like, this is not just like buttering Ryan up. I watch his stuff on his channel so I can stay current. To shift gears and to go into construction or to go into development or go into construction management, that's a whole different skill set. It's a whole different side of your mind. But if that's what's going to bring you joy, because for years you've been talking about this and you want to actually physically, put your stamp on an actual building, you might have to learn some new skills, and it might be worth it because it's going to bring you that joy. But what I don't want to see happen with you, Ryan, is where you start falling off, staying up on policy, you stop meeting with legislators, you stop putting out awesome content on your channel because you're focused down in the weeds of like, how deep does this trench have to be for a water line? And I know personally it's hard, as creators and as movers and shakers, it's hard for us to go halfway into anything. So I would just say be careful. If you want to make that impact because it's going to bring you joy and you're going to have that feather in your cap that not only do I know everything about building ADUs in California, I actually built that one right there, that you don't lose track of your main thing.
It's so funny. I kind of, when we first had this idea for this recording, I thought we would end up talking a lot about like numbers and percentages, and obviously the numbers need to work, but they kind of do on both of these options. And like it's almost like make sure you hit these happiness goals and these like fulfillment goals, because we're fortunate enough to be in a position where we get to pick our projects and we have lots of options and we know they all pencil, or there is a version of each one that pencils out and works out money wise. So we might end up talking very little about numbers and percentages. But to your point about, I think you said happy, like to make sure that you're doing something that makes you happy. I started the process of just sitting down and like looking at listings in a city south of here, where I think there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of value, and this is going to sound dumb to anybody who does real estate stuff already, but I was like, plowing through listings, kind of trying to read the tea leaves, figuring out what the floor plans look like based on the pictures of the listing. And I kept saying like, this is hard. and I kind of in flow state, and I look at the clock, and if 3 hours had gone by as I made this list of properties, and I was just like, this is work. this is a lot of searching. Is that something that is that common experience, or am I making a mountain out of a molehill? and be like, does it get easier? Do you get a knack for this stuff? Am I just doing it wrong by starting with like Zillow or whatever?
No, great questions for you and for our viewers here on the channel. It's hard. It is hard. Analyzing properties is a skill set, and it takes years and years and years of practice to get really good at it. I mean, somebody couldn't just jump right into a YouTube channel and policy and be as good as you. It's going to take years and years of practice. So bringing you joy, or are are you happy learning a new skill, or would you rather be working on your current skills? You brought up a really good point. I'm known for construction. A lot of the content I put out is construction based, but deep down, like at the heart of every single project we do, it's all about the numbers. Like we can't do this to lose money. So at the end of the day, it's like, does it bring you joy, and is it gonna yield a return that's worth your time? Because a yes to building an ADU is a no to a ton of other things, and that's why I do like the fund model. I do like the syndication model. A, for like high net worth individuals, or B, people that just simply have more money than time. Because the time aspect, it's hard to put a cost on our time when we're trading time for money. But I'll tell you what, folks, like time is the only thing that you really can't buy any more of, and it's really valuable. So if you just locked up 3 hours of your time looking at floor plans on Zillow, and you don't really know what you're looking at, you don't have a mentor of how to pick properties and how to purchase properties, and you're not particularly interested in learning all those skills, somebody like you, I might point you towards an investment fund. There's no reason you can't do both. I just want everybody to know, if you're not good at a skill, no matter what it is, if it's picking floor plans to build an ADU or learning how to plant a pear orchard, like you're going to need a mentor, you're going to need practice, and it's going to take time to develop those skills. Like nothing in life is easy, folks.
Yeah, that's it. It's work. and in my head, somehow, like, the actual project had become the work part. And I was like, yeah, but finding the property, let me just start doing the first step. I'm like, oh, geez, this this part's a skill set too. So having a good segue though, Derek, do you think you could be a remote mentor if I keep looking for properties? You help me figure out what pencils. You want to sign? Can I sign you up for a couple more of these calls, man?
Yeah, of course, for sure. And with every challenge, there's also a ton of growth and a great teaching point. I mean, how many people right now are watching? Maybe hit the comments up right now. Hey, I would like to learn this.
Yeah.
Where we did a couple of live or recorded searches talking about what we look for and why, and things that we've learned over the years, things to avoid. The cool part about learning that skill, Ryan, especially you're such a good teacher, you could share it. You could share it with other people. And the humility to say, hey, I'm new at this and I'm going to fail right here in public view. People like that. That's what people want to watch. The more polished everything gets, the more subtitles and emojis that pop up and AI. I think we're going to eventually revert back to just like people like clunking through like the hard stuff and sharing it along the way. And so I don't think there's a better person, to share, hey, I'm learning this, and sharing it as you go. And of course, I would be down to help.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And because I do think as soon as you have somebody with some experience, it's like the biggest cheat code in the world to have somebody who's done dozens and dozens of these successfully. I don't have to make the exact same mistakes you made on number 1 or 2. Because number 1's got a lot of... I'm sure I'll find ways to make my own mistakes.
Yeah, for sure. Plenty of room for that.
Yeah. The basic idea on the roll up my sleeves version is I want to try to actually use some of the lessons you've taught in your videos, where the easiest thing is to find a house that's already kind of got an ADU and they just don't know it yet, which happens a lot in my neck of the woods. There are a lot of larger homes, usually older homes. Like what I was finding a lot in Vallejo is probably some fixer-uppers that maybe built in like the 30s or 40s when it was an active naval base down there, and they're like big houses, and they often have like a master bedroom with an ensuite bathroom, and it's not like a separate wing like some of the homes I've seen on your channel, but it seems like you could get a separate entrance on the exterior, and so that's kind of one of the property types that was really interesting. Or alternatively, up in Napa, it got developed more in the like 80s and 90s. And so I do see some of these like Tuscan villas that they're kind of luxury properties that are too luxurious in a very specific style for the market these days. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they linger because they're just like, I don't know, they're a little Miami Vice for what people are looking for nowadays. And maybe one of those is another type of house where I could come in and say, hey, this wing is actually a unit and the rest of the house is still a house. Does that sound like a reasonable starting place to you?
Yeah, and I'll just put one twist in there is we don't have to envision the perfect property. Like we don't have to think, oh, I need this like large house that's got this split floor plan, completely separate area of the house that has a master with an exterior entrance. Like we don't have to go to best case scenario. And I see a lot of people do that. They're like, what's the best case scenario to buy an almost done ADU and I'm going to live there forever? If we're looking at this through an investment lens, or what I call my ADU goggles here, right, where we're looking at properties differently, we don't have to get that specific yet. We're literally just thinking of where's a property that we can afford in a decent neighborhood, that has good location, good access, and a fairly simple floor plan where we can turn the master bedroom into a one bedroom, one bath, or studio apartment. And we're going to go repeat this strategy in a year or two anyway. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It's not our forever home. If we can just mentally think about all the duplexes that we've ever been in, I like side by side, not over under because of sound transfer, but think of every side by side duplex you've ever been in or seen. Very seldom are those split in half by garages or split in half by a breezeway or covered parking, or very seldom do they have that privacy separation. A lot of times it's like bathroom to bathroom and they're connected, sidewalls. So it doesn't have to be perfect. If I think in my mind of the average track home 3-2 in a family neighborhood, there's always a good option to put in an exterior door into the master bedroom that already has the bathroom and put a small one-wall kitchen up and then soundproof and block off the hallway. Ideally, we don't want bedrooms sharing walls between the two units, but minus that, like you can do this in any house. So yes, there are better layouts. There are layouts that work better. And if you buy an expensive house that already has a semi-detached master suite, that would work better. But we're talking price range difference from 400 to 800 in a lot of markets. So don't get tunnel vision into thinking you have to find the perfect property, because most of the time you're going to have to pay. In the first example you used, a 1930s house that needs a bunch of work that's big, it's expensive to remodel a 2,500 square foot house. If you can find a 1,600 square foot house that doesn't need a whole lot of work, you can do this a lot quicker. And the quicker we do this and the more efficient we can be, the higher return we're going to have. And more importantly, the lower we're going to be able to keep the rents for our tenants. I mean, we're doing it to provide needed infill housing. We're not doing it to provide the most luxurious spot. So that's what I would say. That's kind of a long-winded answer, but so many people get tunneled into what's the perfect property, and then they never find that property because it's too gosh darn expensive. So let's just dumb it down to what property would work for my first one. Like whoever, painted their masterpiece the first time they picked up a brush.
Yeah.
Like that many people.
Yeah. You're giving me advice that reminds me of what I tell people in other fields all the time. I just need to shine that light on myself, right? But it's like that's it. And like it's on YouTube. Anybody who's watching this who wants to do their own YouTube stuff, I always say like nobody watches like the first 25 videos, 50 videos. So just start making stuff, and you'll learn so much faster as you iterate through it. It's absolutely what it's got to be true about everything, right? Every learning curve. Okay, that's really helpful, and it also speaks to some of the frustration I'm feeling just looking at properties where I'm like, none of these are perfect. That makes sense. The perfect ones go pretty fast, right?
Yeah, let's just Ryan, if I can, I'll just give a really quick tease on like what we look for really quickly. So if I'm on Zillow, I'm typing in the keyword section: mother-in-law, bonus room, ADU, granny flat, and you only put them in one at a time and hit search and then refresh each time you change the language. That's the platform I use, is Zillow, and I use the keywords to find these. So bonus room, detached garage, granny flat, ADU, carriage house. That's how we find ADUs that aren't ADUs that everybody else in the market overlooks, unless they're going in there with like a really fine scope to really snipe these things out. And then the other big one that I look for always is any detached building that has a bathroom. So if you're looking at detached garages as keywords and you're scrolling through 100 houses that have detached garages, you're really looking for the ones that already have a bathroom. Not a sink, not a wash basin, not a washer and dryer. Those are usually 2-inch drain lines. We need a 3-inch drain line for the toilet. So any detached bedroom with a bathroom in it is already that's already a double. And we're not going for a grand slam. We're just trying to get on base. So if you can find something that already has a bathroom, half of your money is already accounted for in the purchase price. So those are just a few little tips I'll give people before we go into a video at some point on exactly how we look for properties, and you can too.
Cool. I love it. I love it. All right. So and then kind of the other thing that you spoke to is we do have to make sure it makes sense and we can afford to provide this housing affordably. So like speed is a good component of that because of the cost of capital and how fast we can go through and repeat this process. But just in general, the other thing I started doing was collecting rent listings in the area that I was looking at and seeing like what's available on the market, what are people charging for rent. Is that the best way to figure out what realistic rents look like in an area, or is there a smarter way to do that?
Yeah, that's the best way, period. But you have to be focused on that as well. Some people will look at Rentometer. Some people will look at, the Zestimate for rentals. But what most people don't look at is the actual housing type comparator. So just like in a residential real estate sales, a sales price is going to be stacked against comparable properties, and that's how we come up with value. Rent is the same way. But I see a lot of people, they're like, hey, I live in the Bay Area. I'm going to do a 1-1 ADU. So I go look at Craigslist and I go look at Zillow and Hotpads and apartments.com and I type in 1 bedroom, 1 bath ADU. And it looks like the average is about $3,000 a month. I'm like, gosh, that's crazy. Go back into that search and limit it down to housing type. It can be apartment, it can be cottage, it can be house. So what they do is they go back into that search system and they turn it into an apartment housing type because it's actually a shared wall and it's attached, and the average rents are like $2,100. So you have to compare apples to apples. I always look at comparable properties, but you got to go to the housing type option. If it's detached, you can put in house or cottage or flat. If it's attached, you need to put in, condo or apartment, so you can get the most like comparison. Shared wall ADUs don't rent for as much as separate, ADUs that are detached. And I talk about this a lot, Ryan, and it's important for people to hear that tenants want the same thing that homeowners want in this order. They want location, they want privacy, and they want amenities. And that privacy is a close second to location. If we can not share walls, the detached garage that already has a bathroom, that's why that's such a good option. But to answer your question quickly, use comparators, but just make sure the housing type is correct. Don't compare your projected rental rate with a shared wall ADU to that of a standalone detached ADU. That's the number one mistake I see people make when trying to come up with a projected rental price.
Mm-hmm. And then this is just a newbie question completely, but when I was looking up rentals, all I could find was available rentals. Is there something like MLS for rent where you see rent deals that just closed? Like do Rentometer or those estimates? Are they all?
Yeah, they're
that?
taking that into account. And I'll tell you what I do personally is I look at rental markets in my area obsessively, and I look at them, every day, and I have for decades. Yeah. And so you get a feel of how long something has been sitting, if that's a little bit high. Yeah. If you see a listing and you're like, well, that's a pretty good listing, and the next day you go back in there to look at your buy box area and it's gone, it rented. Another way to kind of back into that same idea is to go to the listing, and you can do it usually in price. You can do it in order of listing. So you can filter how you see all the properties in your area. And if you go by date and you start at the bottom, you can see the rentals that have been on the market for 30, 60, 90 days. And you can either A, assume that they're too high, or B, assume that they were rented and not taken down. So that's kind of how you can get the difference between a pending rental and actual rented rate. And the other cool thing that Zillow has when you're looking at rentals is you can scroll down to price history, and you can see what it rented for last year when they leased it. You could see if they just dropped the rent, and it gives you a percentage drop. So you can you're like, hey, that's a good comp. It's an ADU literally 2 blocks away. It's also a bedroom conversion ADU, so it's an attached wall, and you can see what their price is, what it's been, and if they've raised it or lowered it over time.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, I'll check that out. So people are actually listing rentals through Zillow, so it's real. It's actual data. It's not always a Zestimate.
No. It's all based on real data. And Zillow is the number one spot, and that's new. It has not been that way in kind of the West Coast regions. For a long time, Craigslist was kind of the go-to in most markets in the Pacific Northwest. And in the last 12 to 24 months, there's been a major shift. I'd say 60% of all traffic for rentals that we own and manage and rentals that other people in my network own and manage, the scale has tipped. Zillow is now the biggest player for not only for landlords that are listing, but also for tenants that are looking for places. Craigslist has gotten
That's
so
juicy. That's
scammy.
That's good data.
The
Yeah.
protection of your information is better on Zillow, and I'm not paid to say this. I have no affiliation with them. They just have the best platform right now, and tenants know that, and owners know that.
Yeah. Maybe this is I sit on the board of a nonprofit that Zillow gives a bunch of money to, and we're very grateful for their support. But there is no paid endorsement here.
Go to Zillow.
But yeah, that's it. Go to Zillow and go to more importantly, go to Casita Coalition, the nonprofit, and help us use those Zillow funds. No, okay, that's super helpful to think about. Because it is like the other piece where as I was starting the actual process, I was like, oh man, this is work too. Now I got to like become obsessed with becoming a renter mentally again, which I just, my wife and I were just in DC, so we were renters for the first time in a long time. And just so much has changed since we got into a house, and it's fascinating how frustrating that whole process still was. Oh, anyway, I gotta get. I've got my ADU goggles for when I'm looking at these properties, and then I'm gonna have to get some renter goggles so that I can. Yeah, that's it. I'll use them more for ADUs than skiing, probably.
Perfect.
But that's super helpful. Okay, to take a step back, I don't need to like sign my name in blood to do one option A or option B in this video, right? Like. The investment fund's got some deadlines and stuff around it, but this personal investment, like, it's a lot of steps before I get to any kind of commitment. So I just think I should start doing this work. Derek had a great idea. If people are watching this and they want to follow along, post something in the comments, because that'll give me an indication of how much of my work I should be sharing in public. Or if you guys are like, Ryan, we don't want to watch you scrolling through Zillow, that does not sound exciting, then I won't do it. But I might as well just start doing that work. So it's very helpful. And then as I'm walking down that road and doing some of that stuff, if I'm looking over my shoulder and going, that investment fund seems like they're doing this part for me. They're doing every part for me. What are the things that you would suggest I think about? And like, if I had like a little decision calculus where I'm like, if this happens, maybe I should just go back to that investment fund. Or if I'm feeling this way, or if I'm, what are the triggers that should make me go like, why aren't I just doing that investment fund?
Yeah, for sure. Great question. It all, for me, my compass is always like, does this bring me joy? If you're a creative person and you're a builder and you want to see something come out of the ground and that is what gets your juices flowing and that excites you, do the ground up build and share that with everybody. If you start to feel like you're banging your head against the wall and it's not fun, and the greatest and best use of your time, which is sharing legislation and doing marketing stuff and helping people in California, if that's brings you more joy and that's taking a hit, that's when I would pull back. I mean, I'm always weighing everything against, do I enjoy doing this, or would I be better spending my time doing something else? That would be the indicator I would use. The nice thing about a fund, if you're looking at an investment fund or a syndication or pooling your money with somebody else that's already an expert, is you don't have to learn all this stuff. So if you're not addicted to learning, if you don't like solving complex problems every day, and you just want to go work your 40 hours a week at your dental clinic that you own, go do that. Okay, do what you're good at that brings you joy. If you're not good at finding property and building real estate, that doesn't mean don't do it. It just means that if you're not good at it and you don't enjoy the learning process and the challenges that come with it, the investment fund might be a great option. Another thing I would add to that, and I spoke of this earlier, is it's like, what is your time worth? Like, everybody has a dollar amount of their time. Okay, you can back it into the amount of hours that you work per year and what you make annually. You can do some really rough math of about what your hourly rate is based on your salary at your regular job, but come up with a rough idea of what an hour of your time is worth. And then you can pretty easily extrapolate, like, how much is it costing you to learn how to look for properties on Zillow? How much is it going to cost you to interview contractors? And you might find when you see all that in black and white that you're much better off doing your day job and just paying to be an accredited investor in a fund, whatever fund it may be, and taking a little bit lower return, but in trade for that, you're not investing all that time, which also has a cost. We have this this habit of thinking that our time is free, and that's a bad habit to get into because time is so valuable, and we can't buy any more of it back.
I love it. I think we've chatted in the pre-call and stuff, and this whole time I'm just thinking I feel like I want to do both because I'm addicted to learning, right? You know that, and there's as much education in tucked into both of the. Anyway, I'm here. If people have made it this far in the video, email me. My email address is down below, and tell me what you think about this stuff. If you are an accredited investor and want to know more about the fund, like back-footed sales pitch, like, hey, I'll loop you in to the opportunity and give you some of the details if you're curious about it. If you want to see me just do one of these in public, tell me that. And yeah, I think Derek's rooting for. Yeah. It feels right. It feels like the time for it, right? Like I've been talking about these a long time. I gotta start making with some. What were you gonna say?
Oh, I was just cheering you on for the build. And just one thing I would add, folks, is just leverage your skill set and your network. I mean, Ryan is really well positioned to get, good deals from good people to build a good product. Maybe you have a little bit of wealth in your family, or you just inherited some money, and the lever you have is deploying that capital to make an honest return in something you care about. Okay, everybody has different skill sets in different situations. Not everybody's going to be able to do what Ryan does because they don't have the skills or the network he does. A lot of people don't have the money to be an accredited investor, so that they may not even have that option. So also, take the option that makes sense to you based on your skill set and your income or the capital you have. So I hate to say that not everybody is going to have a choice, but just leverage what you have available to you.
Makes a lot of sense. I'm gonna use a lot of my unfair advantages every chance I get. I'm gonna call somebody who appreciates the work on the channel, and I'm gonna try to leverage that as much as I can. And whatever people got, they got to use their advantages in life, right? That's part of how we get stuff done. All right, this has been really cool. Speaking of leveraging unfair advantages, being able to pick up the phone and call you, Derek, is really valuable to me. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your experience, and I'm going to be doing it again. So watch your back. That caller ID says Ryan. You know I'm going to have a lot of questions.
Yeah, I pick up my phone when you call or anybody else. We're always glad to help. Cool. That.
Cool. I'll throw a link. What should I put in for you? Do you want people to see a specific video, or will we surprise them?
No big deal. If you're interested in going the owner builder route or going the I'm going to build an ADU route, we have a playlist on our YouTube channel that's how to build an ADU. And we have a 14-part series of exactly what we do, how we do it, and then we give away the plans for the ADU that we teach you how to build. I don't have a single email. I'm never going to send you anything. I've got nothing to sell you. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But we really are trying to open source housing. So check out our channel if you haven't already seen it. I will say that a lot of our audience, I think, cross-pollinate because we know a lot of the same people. But if you follow my channel, make sure you go check out How To ADU. Again, Ryan is the guy that I go to, especially for anything California or anything with legislative efforts. So it's all about expanding our network and helping each other investing, building. It's both. It's a team sport.
Thank you very much, sir.